You have never played Grand Theft Auto 5, or at least there's so much of the game that Rockstar hides from you that you may as well not have. Fear not, for I shall reveal to you all the dirty secrets hidden just off screen during the cutscenes of the game. While our camera is locked in place, outside of our vision, characters and assets still exist, despite that we're never meant to see them. Some reveal content that was cut from the game, others suggest Rockstar took significant shortcuts during development, and parts of it, frankly, are just disturbing. We start off strong in our journey into the depths of the unknown with a black box that appears and then disappears when the hostages are put in the back room. Truly amazing stuff. Trevor says,
"Sit tight! I'll handle the blasting!"
But if we watch him, we can see he doesn't do this at all. He instead chills in the hallway for a bit before teleporting back. So how does the bomb get on the vault? Maybe Jasper saw Trevor having some difficulties and so helped him out by placing the bomb himself. Next are 6 boxes that are used as reference points for the vault explosion, as well as the fake unbroken wall popping beneath the ground to reveal the damaged wall that was always present underneath. The actual damage of the room also shifts a bit when we transition into gameplay.
Give it up! I got him!
Jaspers magically appears to pounce on Michael and casually delete his mask. While this also causes Michael to drop his gun, it actually remains attached to him, with it moving as he struggles, before later warping to the ground. The explosion of this door is amazingly detailed, all those tiny parts exploding outwards, but did you catch the incredibly scuffed parts? Just as the explosion starts, the door frame pops beneath the map.
It ain't supposed to go down like this.
It never is! Come on!
When outside, if you've ever thought, damn, there is too much snow here, at least one developer agreed with you as they moved exactly 1 mound of snow below the map, banishing it to solitude for all of eternity. It seems as though Trevor wasn't doing the heist for the money, because when he gets into the car, he decides to donate his share to the Abyss. I mean, come on man, my merch store is right there. There are clearly better uses for the money. Given how much these cops teleport around, I can understand why the gang was scared they wouldn't get away. In fact, for 5 frames it seems as though Trevor considered bailing out of the car before changing his mind. At one point the cops decide to warp themselves out of their car, potentially to get some fresh air, rejuvenate themselves for the pursuit, before hopping back in to continue. One of the greatest mysteries in GTA 5 is whether or not the local yokel survives after being shot through the brain. Sadly, as you can see, he goes through all the stages of death. First the stillness, then the jiggling of the head, the hands and feet, before being deleted from reality. We definitely aren't seeing that man in GTA 6. You of course remember how the gang shakes off the cops. They ram them, which causes one cop to shove his arm through his face as they crash into a tree, which of course kills them as their car flips over. Then the car flips the right way back up, causing the guys to come back to life and try to drive away before they are banished. With the cops defeated, our gang throws their weapons beneath the map, which is admittedly a good place to stash murder weapons that you don't want to be found. After they get hit by the train, they summon new weapons that they must have stashed under the map earlier. This sort of preparation is what made these guys such effective bank robbers. Fun fact, the guy who drives the train works for Los Santos Transit. It's therefore kinda strange that he'd be driving a train on the other side of the country in North Yankton, but hey, maybe it's a really long train track. Although in reality, he isn't even controlling the train is controlled by this box. Also, this box is a cheater. The gang would have beaten the train if it didn't engage its warp drive and warp ahead. Literally rigs. Oh god, I can't believe I got fucked by a box! At some point you might have wondered how Dave got to North Yankton. It turns out he drove a car that is registered in San Andreas, all the way on the other side of the country. I honestly respect his willingness to drive 40 hours to get from the south to the north of America, or at least I would if he didn't teleport there instead. So Dave takes his shot, missing Trevor and hitting Brad instead. He then thinks, oh shit, that's embarrassing, I have to get out of here, so he teleports away. He then remembers he needs to shoot Michael as a part of their deal to fake his death, so he teleports back, takes that shot, and then teleports away again. If he had spent less time practicing teleporting and more time practicing shooting, maybe he would have hit Trevor as he intended. In the angle used in the original cutscene, you can actually see Dave running to his car for about 4 seconds. You just likely never noticed because you focused on Michael. Something you'll notice all throughout this video is how often Rockstar puts fake lights to brighten up areas in ways that make no sense, but make the cutscenes look better. To add to his embarrassment, Dave leaves behind his scope and magazine after his first shot. It's a good thing he remembers to take them with him after he comes back for his second. We of course don't normally get to see Brad writhe around on the ground as his bag clips in and out of his body, but what is most interesting is that Brad's eyes continue to move and blink even after he dies. He honestly just looks bored. Many times over the years, people have said to me, "Mr. Darkviper, sir, how does Dave handle the disposal of Brad's corpse?" To which I say, what corpse?
Brad's gonna be fine.
Dave and Michael had this entire scheme so planned out that they even made sure to preemptively create an empty hole in reality for Michael's fake burial. Honestly, it was smart to buy one early, given the later increased demand for burial spots. Honestly, Trevor had no reason to run away because the police cars driving up are entirely empty and their arrival deletes the other cops from reality. He certainly could have taken the few cops that were actually there, so realistically he abandoned Michael and Brad for absolutely nothing. Some friend he is.
Hey!
You of course remember the old woman that Trevor sees and uses as a shield. Well, I hate to blame the victim, but she was kinda asking for it. First, she pops into existence, generally a bad move. But to make matters worse, she just stands there, before deciding to run towards the gunfire and therefore Trevor. This event clearly scars her mentally, as after she warps away from the police, she is left with an absolutely horrified look on her face. I mean, she didn't look very good before, but this is definitely worse. This whole thing clearly confuses the policeman, as he is left permanently scratching the top of his head. And people say Trevor's the crazy one. Speaking of Trevor, we now know how he escapes the police. He teleports, which honestly doesn't even seem that special, as everyone can seemingly do it. Although he does embarrassingly leave behind his magazine. I wish I could show you more of Trevor's journey, but it simply cuts to black. At Michael's fake funeral, he may not be buried, but he is certainly underground. At least until he feels like taking a look at the funeral. Interestingly, despite that we are unable to see it in the normal cutscene, Dave does look over at Michael, and in fact stares directly at him as Michael slowly walks away. Dave, Michael is pretending to be dead, stop drawing attention to him. Traveling forward in time, we get to Michael's therapy session, where we can see on Dr. Freelander's calendar that he plans to rob a bank and then kill everyone a week later. Honestly, if he killed everyone first, it would probably make it easier to rob the bank. A rookie mistake. Normally we don't get to see Michael's entire journey as he leaves Dr. Freelander's office, and while his stride may be weird, what's certainly weirder is when he's inside a bunch of people. We now know for certain that Michael was cheating in his relationship. Things become disturbing though when he starts to T-pose around Los Santos. I think this is the sort of thing that causes Michael to need therapy. At least getting all of this out of his system enables him to start walking like a normal person again. Maybe this is just something that happens to everyone in their 40s. One small detail we normally don't get to see is that Michael seemingly checks his watch after speaking to Franklin and Lamar. That he then moments later teleports away suggests that he was late to be somewhere. Michael's journey around the map isn't unique, as following any of the NPCs during this cutscene shows them warping everywhere you can imagine and sometimes changing clothes. It seems as though that anything that is spawned in and will be used later is warped beneath the map until the time it is needed again, at which point it is warped to the surface. Moving on now, we can see the police go to quite a bit of effort to arrive in style when they go to arrest Franklin and Lamar for stealing the cars.
Whatever, you explain that shit. I'll see you at the dealership.
I am very honored to announce to you that you are Employee of the Month, huh?
Now this may somewhat lessen Lamar's aura for you, but his perfectly timed entry into Simeon's office wasn't a coincidence. He was actually sitting beneath the ground the entire time, listening to Franklin and Simeon, waiting for the perfect time to enter.
Knock, knock, niggas.
Hello, Lamar.
What's up, homie? What's up, then, homie?
The Vargos show us that the best way to sneak up on thieves is to repeatedly warp yourself beneath the ground whenever they might see you. Additionally, while during gameplay we store our guns in the pocket dimension of our assholes, during cutscenes characters will frequently store their weapons beneath the map. They just wheel them into their hands whenever they're needed. It's like watching the behind the scenes of a magic trick. We are not meant to see how it's done. So Lamar wants you to believe that he is the one and only original gangster, but actually there are two different Lamars. It's just that sometimes one of them exists below the map, doing all the same movements as the one on the surface. You might ask why he's there, but think about it. At the end of the day, who better to watch your back than yourself? In fact, we can see Lamar 2 again when we confront D on the mission shop, and there's also a duplicate of the bandana that Lamar uses to cover his face. In the original cutscene, D is scared off when he believes he's outnumbered 2-1, so he probably would have shit himself if he knew he was actually outnumbered 3-1.
Oh, shit. Damn, he got fucked up.
After D gets hit off his bike by a bus, it's pretty unbelievable how quickly he recovers in order to run off. However, you cannot appreciate just how quickly he recovers until you move the camera, where we can see that he instantly pops up off the ground after being hit. The guy just runs off blunt force trauma. Apparently cardio is really a cure for everything. You might have wondered how Dee manages to get inside the train car that we later find him in, and the answer is magic, of course. With powers like these, he should have been running this town. When Lamar brings the van around to pick up Dee, he shows us that apparently you can pull off wheelies in a van. What amazing skill.
Nigga, shut the fuck up, just get in.
Throughout the game, Chop shows remarkable intelligence for a dog, and watching him during this end cutscene reveals why this is the case, which is that Chop is a demon. You might have wondered what crazy and kinky stuff Amanda and the tennis pro were up to before Franklin breaks into Michael's house, and the answer is that they were not existing. Truly sick stuff. Some people ask, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I've got a new one. What came first, the gun or the Michael? It turns out, it's the gun. I like how Michael's ass just slurps up the entire blanket. Looking behind the scenes shows us how Simeon is so effective as a businessman, which is that there are actually two of him. Franklin's portrayal of Simeon is now doubly as bad.
What the fuck are you doing?
Now I'm going to tell you an interesting secret. The tennis pro we chase isn't actually the one we catch banging Amanda. When Michael first goes inside his house, a fully clothed tennis pro appears in the car on the driveway, and he sits patiently all throughout the confrontation with the other man. He then instantly strips naked and drives away, leading to Michael and Franklin chasing after him. I guess it's possible that Amanda was getting tag teamed by twins. It does seem like her kind of thing. Now I'm sure you've seen Michael pull down Martin's house, but that is boring compared to these 8 cubes that are used as reference points for the house's collapse. Exciting, right? Also, if you look very closely at the destruction, you will notice some odd things like these windows disappearing rather than being destroyed. The reason for this is that items that Rockstar couldn't be bothered destroying are teleported beneath the ground. When they return to Michael's home, we learn that Franklin and Michael are not very observant, because they somehow missed this black SUV teleporting next to them.
Hey, kid. I had no idea it was gonna get that hot.
You can tell Martin is getting old, because when he leaves, he embarrassingly forgets to take his car with him. I mean, everyone loses their keys sometimes, but your whole car? Sad. When Michael turns to leave, Martin's car incredibly, politely waves goodbye. So maybe Martin didn't forget his car. He just chose to abandon it because it was possessed.
Oh, great.
Michael and Ricky smoking is clearly not a good thing, but they do something even worse. They chuck both the cigarette pack and the lighter under reality. Do they not know that there are starving children in the world that would have loved to smoke those?
The fuck you doing?
While Jimmy does get mad when Michael breaks his TV, I guarantee he's going to be even more mad later when he realizes that his game controller has gone missing. Honestly, every time something is misplaced, there's a 50-50 chance it has fallen through reality and into the back rooms. After all, this either happens or it doesn't. Michael's argument with Jimmy at the pier is funny, but it doesn't hold a candle to all the background characters doing the most casual T-poses I've ever seen. I really want to know what this guy thinks he sees through this telescope that caused him to walk away and then walk back repeatedly just to double and triple check he really saw what he thinks he saw. Whatever it is, it leads him to T-pose to meditate on the implications before then teleporting back to the telescope but refusing to again witness whatever he saw. At least this is better than the guy who pretends to look through a telescope to trick his friend into having a look out to sea before casually T-posing in triumph at his successful ruse. While Michael confronting Tracey is hilarious, many people have expressed worry over the fate of the innocent boombox that Michael casts off the boat. Fear not, for the boombox uses all its power to levitate in order to avoid the watery abyss. Tracey is right to say these guys are serious. I mean, look at them here underwater T-posing. That is amazingly intimidating. Michael and Tracey were lucky to escape with their lives. Now, if you think the confrontation with Dee on long stretch is normally crazy, trust me, it is far weirder behind the scenes. Before anything starts, under reality we have a pistol and a shotgun, so let us now find out who they belong to. After Stretch shoots Dee twice, with a pistol that isn't the one from under the map, Lamar magically teleports to the door and gets a new shotgun. This too isn't the one from under the map. Stretch then teleports and points his gun directly at Lamar's face before seemingly deciding not to shoot him. Amazingly, the gun Stretch is holding is actually an entirely different gun, and his old pistol slowly floats after him and is absorbed by his ass, never to be seen again. Finally, the shotgun from under the map travels into Franklin's hands to prepare for him to fight, and the pistol, it teleports outside into the hands of one of the arriving ballers who for some reason is floating on the outside of a car. Why the hell was any of this programmed this way? You have to admire the baller's dedication to punctuality. They don't bother waiting for their homies to finish getting into the car, they just expect them to levitate. And furthermore, they'll phase through roads, walls, and basically reality itself if that's what it takes to arrive on time. Now this might be one of my favorite details of the entire video. Some of you while playing would have noticed this motion sensor light on Franklin's garage, which is in fact the only motion sensor light in the entire game, but you likely didn't notice that they removed this light when you start the mission Father Son, so it is not there if you go to his house during the mission. It is further still not there when you leave the mission, and remains removed until the very end of the mission long stretch. I suspect the reason they removed it is it would likely flicker on and off during the final cutscene for the mission, and so, rather than fix that, they just removed it entirely until it was over. You can see here at the end of the mission, it just pops back into existence. Simply amazing.
You love her.
Well, I love her a lot,
During the jewel store heist subtle approach, we throw some gas into the jewel store, and I never noticed that the people in the cutscene that get knocked out are not the same as those on the ground after the cutscene. Most of the previous people are removed, except oddly one person who gets put under the map where they stare blankly for a moment before eventually dying. Additionally, the jewel cases do not visually lose their jewels when they are robbed, they lose them when they are broken, so simply shooting the cases results in all the jewels disappearing. When the glass breaks, empty cases are spawned under the map, and they are then moved up to replace the previously full case. Watching underneath, you can see which glass I destroy by which empty cases appear below. After robbing the store, in both approaches Michael oddly just walks away on foot before appearing later in a truck with Paige. You might wonder how he gets from the jewel store to a truck in the sewer, and the answer is that he sort of doesn't. So after the robbery, he aimlessly walks away until you move a far enough distance away from him that the game decides to delete him. Then an entirely different Michael is birthed into reality near the sewer exit. If you use the speedrun route which keeps you from needing to go underground, you can actually go visit and bully him.
We're here, but be ready.
However, when Franklin does get to the end of the sewer tunnel, this new Michael gets teleported with Paige into a newly spawned truck. So when Franklin leaves the sewer, there are a bunch of cops already waiting for him, and it appears as though that they instantly start shooting when they see him. This actually isn't the case, as even before Franklin gets to the end of the sewer, they pop into reality, for some reason in the wrong seat, and so immediately change seat even before he gets to the end of the tunnel where he's visible, and they even pre-shoot at the wall. They are so committed to being ready to get him. Working hard or hardly working? At the end of the heist, Lester tells everyone they need to keep their heads down.
We get out of here. Keep our heads down.
The crew seems to take his words literally because they decide to move their heads and everything else attached down below reality itself. Admittedly, this is a good place to avoid the cops. Those guys don't even like going into the sewers. At Michael's home, just as he and Franklin get comfortable on the couch and finish speaking, Dave walks in at the exact perfect moment to question Michael about the jewel store heist.
Davey! Long time no see.
Dave's entrance was able to be so perfectly timed because he was using his sneaky FIB skills to sit below reality and eavesdrop on their conversation. Dave was clearly very nervous about getting his timing right because he's walking around and is very jittery. Before his big entrance, he opens his mouth and does some vocal exercises before then warping up to the surface at just the right time. This is why the FIB pays him the big bucks. Style. Trevor's journey during the opening cutscene of Mr. Phillips is just fantastic. He first warps and pulls up his pants very fast so he can walk out of his home while drinking. However, he then teleports back inside to grab the beer that wasn't there moments before and that he already had with him when he left the first time. When he leaves now for the second time, Ashley seems to take the sexist joke that women belong in the kitchen a little bit too literally, because she teleports literally inside the kitchen counter. After she clips through reality a bit, she seems to get bored and so goes after Trevor. Before Trevor throws his bottle at Johnny, there are broken shards already beneath the ground. When the unbroken bottle hits Johnny, it doesn't actually break. Instead, it is warped beneath the map, and the shards of a different bottle are warped up in their place. We can rest easy knowing that no bottles were actually harmed in the killing of Johnny.
Who the fuck are you speaking to?
Trevor in slow motion walking away from the exploding O'Neill's house is a great scene, so allow me to ruin it for you. Underground, the low detail fire spawns in looking like lava from Minecraft as it is shot up into the house. I like how the larger fire patiently waits and lets the little fire go first. Before the explosion even happens, a hell of a lot of stuff in and around the house just vanishes like magic. Clearly Rockstar didn't have the budget to destroy this stuff as well. Cutbacks had to be made. My absolute favorite behind the cutscene secret is here on Friends Reunited. As Trevor looks out over Los Santos, you can see a helicopter off in the distance. I swear to you, I'm not making this up. Wade is flying that helicopter. To shock you even more, this Wade is not the Wade that we drove to Los Santos with. We drove here with gameplay Wade. The one we see in the helicopter is cutscene Wade. As to why they put Wade in the helicopter, generally to get helicopters to move, you need a model within them, and I guess Wade was just on hand.
Thank you, Michael, whatever the fuck are—
When Amanda and Michael argue on fame or shame, they are of course interrupted by many people. First comes Fabian, teleporting into the kitchen, and Jimmy stands off to the side to wait his turn, while also efficiently levitating at the high of the kitchen so he can lazily avoid walking up that single step. Trevor of course is always impolite, so rather than taking the front door, he enters via the hallway furniture, and while his legs appear to be broken, fortunately he just walks it off. Doctors hate him for this one simple trick.
Somebody say yoga?
During the Fame or Shame show, they may point the cameras at Laszlo, but the real show is going on just off screen, as Trevor and Michael do amazingly casual T-poses. It's almost like they're stretching for the upcoming fight with the security. Then Trevor seems to freeze in horrified amazement at how bad Tracey's dancing is.
Trevor?
The cutscenes normally lead us to believe that Michael lets Laszlo go fairly unharmed. However, if we follow him just off screen, we see that what happens to him is far worse than any beating. I don't know what could cause this to happen to a person, but I guarantee it would take $5,000 for a hospital to fix.
Davey, how you doing?
About as good as can be expected, but the news is not good.
You of course remember when Davey gives Michael a love tap to the back of the head, and Michael wakes up on an IAA operating table in the morgue, but I don't think you appreciate how good these morticians are at their job, because Michael is invisible while they prepare to work on him. This is apparently not out of the ordinary for these guys. You don't need to worry about Michael though, as he quickly recovers from his sudden bout of invisibility.
Oh, Jesus!
No, I don't think so, man. I don't think Jesus could go invisible. If Michael doesn't wake up in time, the morticians get treated to a blood fountain from what appears to be thin air. Michael apparently can also get changed as fast as Superman in a phone booth. Check this out. First, a gun, flashlight, and magazine appear levitating in the air. Now the mortician runs out, only for both to be deleted by a security guard popping into existence. This guard, despite holding a pistol, puts his arm through his own body to try to support his weapon. He then seems to decide that this is a bit uncomfortable, so he removes himself from himself. I had no idea GTA 5 was a horror game. Franklin is usually portrayed as being poor during this part of the game, but here we can see he actually owns 2 bikes. And these aren't your regular bikes, they're self-driving and can phase through reality. All I'm saying is that I wish I was rich enough just to abandon a bike so I could make a cool exit. During Three's company, Michael walks off into a room, and then the screen fades to black to suggest that sufficient time has passed to allow him to get changed. In reality, Michael walks through a door, again uses his instant changing powers, and then teleports outside.
Bite me.
Let's go!
Watching our fight with the IAA from within the building is very funny. The enemies each appear, and then make sure to wait their turn so that we the player do not get overwhelmed. This whole scene is really just that trope where the bad guys go at the protagonist one at a time, rather than rushing them all at once. It turns out that Michael enjoyed rappelling down the building so much that he decides to do it a bunch more times, but this time without the building. Trevor surprisingly respects this, so is willing to leave with the helicopter whenever Michael wants to have a go. I mean, hey, it's always good to have hobbies, right? The FIB are surprisingly bad at getting Mr. K into the van, but in their defense, it is a very slippery van. It is all over the place. Mr. K actually manages to escape at one point, but the FIB headquarters quickly teleports them all away. So close to freedom. If Michael's criminal career had not taken off, he'd have done well as one of those stage performances where they change outfits dozens of times very quickly. While looking behind the scenes on Did Somebody Say Yoga, I said to myself, how the hell did I never notice this? Watch their yoga mats. They move by themselves. They in fact do this multiple times to suit the different poses they want to do. Honestly, I don't think I ever noticed that the mats change orientation at all, which feels kind of foolish in hindsight.
Chota. Yeah.
It has long been a mystery who pulled Michael away to rob him after Jimmy drugs him and kicks him out of his car. Well, wonder no longer, because the culprit was a ghost. Somehow a part of me always suspected. Not to be racist or anything, but ghosts are kinda shady. So Michael hallucinates getting taken up into a spaceship, and we can tell it's not real because this beam of light is just hanging there. It's not connected to the ship at all. This ship as well, entirely fake. This isn't where he actually ends up. He is teleported to an interior that is just hovering in the sky, which is actually kind of weird for Rockstar. They usually put their interiors under the map. Michael's imagination is so limited. I mean, where's all the stuff? This room is hella empty. After the fake aliens are done with Michael, they open the hatch and they make sure to levitate so they don't fall out with him. Michael flailing around in the air is so amazingly awkward when you can't hear him. You might ask, where do the aliens go? They and their fake ship just disappear, although they accidentally leave their lights behind. I think we can all relate to this. It happens to me all the time. Now I know on By the Book you've always wanted to get a better look at Trevor shitting behind the dumpster, and surprisingly yes, his cock and balls are there, entirely visible. I mean, I obviously have to censor this, but I can show you that Trevor has no ankles, which is something at least.
Woo! That is a wrap, my friends! Excellent work, the pair of you!
After Mr. K is tortured by Trevor, Steve turns to leave whilst telling Trevor to take care of him. Try and guess how Steve leaves the room. I don't care what you just guessed, you are wrong. So he literally goes through the door while his head spins around inside his body before having his neck broken with his face angled up to the sky while he goes to relax on the railing with the most dopey possible look on his face. That's what you thought was going to happen? Well, aren't you smart?
Run! You're free!
People have always wondered what happens to Mr. K after Trevor drops him off at the airport. Well, he falls onto an invisible platform which breaks every bone in his body before he is then deleted from reality. It's a terrible way to go. Same thing happened to my uncle. There was a developer at Rockstar looking at Hood Safari and they thought, you know what this scene needs? The handle of a shovel. Not a full shovel, just the handle. Well, I guess they didn't have just the handle of a shovel, so they used a full shovel but stuck the rest of it underground.
Your homies acting all superior?
So whatever vibe the handle was bringing was unnecessary after Trevor shows up, so it gets removed.
Wow, Franklin, you never told me that you had a sister.
That shovel carried that scene and it never gets any recognition.
Courier service. Package to collect.
The Ballers had quite the plan when it came to their deal. The guy summons the fake brick of cocaine from thin air to leave as little evidence as possible, and then when the deal goes bad, he steps back and faces half into the wall, this so as little of his body is in the line of fire as he can manage. Then, when the time feels right, he teleports away with all the evidence of the crime, including the furniture. I can barely fathom that level of criminal genius. Lamar also had a plan though. You might think there was a chance he would have gone to the deal with no backup, but not so. Thinking ahead, Lamar made sure to bring a copy of himself for support. More than just that, to prevent the money being stolen prior to the deal, he stashed it beneath the ground. When the deal goes bad, Lamar doesn't want the money to get bullet holes in it, so he stashes it beneath the ground for him to get later. This man is truly a criminal genius. If you watch very closely, you can actually see when Nice Lamar swaps with Combat Lamar, who has also manifested a bag of fake money. Amazing. Franklin and Trevor were also prepared. They made sure to stash weapons under the ground so they could summon them when shit goes down. This kind of preparation is why they're the main characters. While discussing the future Luigiing of a CEO, Lester and Franklin have what seems to be like a dozen people walk around behind them. In reality, it's just like 2 guys who can shapeshift. Each one is like 4 guys each. I mean, why hire a bunch of people when you can get 2 guys who are all the people?
Hello, Trevor. I missed you.
Hello, Wade. I missed you too.
The opening cutscene of the offshore approach gives us real insight into how scared Wade and Floyd are of Trevor. Wade is in fact so scared of getting in the way that he teleports inside a wall, lays down, and then vanishes from existence. Floyd is so scared that he forgets how to use his legs and move. It's just sad, really. Look at Wade at the end of the mission. He so much does not want to get in the way that he drops beneath the ground. Someone really needs to lift this guy's self-esteem. Michael and Franklin, though, enter the conversation in the smoothest way possible.
I thought you would be smarter than this.
Although they both, for some reason, alternate between putting their feet beneath the ground and just bending their legs. I have no idea why they're pretending to be shorter.
All right, F, I'm in position. Damn, that's a long way up.
Michael, on the freighter approach to the Merryweather heist, shows us a really impressive diving technique. The million-dollar question, though, is how does Michael climb up onto the boat as an out-of-shape 48-year-old? The answer is, he doesn't.
T-pick 4 spots for the bombs.
I mean, hell, if I could teleport, I'd do the same thing. We are told by the game that the boat is destroyed by C4 that Michael puts on it, but in reality, it is this fire brick that destroys the boat. Although I don't think it would really help in court to say, Your Honor, it wasn't me, it was the magic fire brick. The end of the mission is great though, because we learn that Lester is Jesus. Or at least he might be a distant relative. Whatever the case may be, he's got the walking on water thing down. You may have noticed that Lester is fully clothed here. Yes, but Lester is a creepy weird guy, so he's not going to miss an opportunity to go bare ass in public.
Some of the government, some of it is pretty corrupt.
So our gang gathers round to discuss the upcoming Blitz play heist. At the end of the discussion, Michael hangs back sitting on a box, and we drive away with Trevor at the end. Where does Franklin go? He goes under the ground because Rockstar couldn't be bothered giving him a way to leave, and he then disappears. What's funny though, is once we've done all the setups and we get to the actual heist, Franklin appears in the exact same spot to pop up like a mole to participate. I mean, that's one way to avoid helping in the setups.
So we really finna do this shit?
So there are two interesting things about the actual Blitz play heist. First, when they're crashing into the wall, this platform appears, which isn't the interesting part. What is interesting is this ominous black cube that appears on it. Once upon a time, this would have caused endless debates as to what it actually is, but I'm pretty sure it's just the reference point for the destruction, and it just happens to look kinda weird. The second interesting thing is how these guys die inside the van before they even hit anything, and they further ignore physics until they stop and remember physics exist. Then one of the guys later just disappears for no reason. I guess Rockstar just forgot his body was meant to be in this scene.
Got a package for Devin Weston.
It turns out that Devin Weston was actually really nervous to meet Michael. We know this because just before Michael arrives, Devin practices all the movements he intends to do in his conversation with him. When Michael arrives, he quickly returns to his spot and then does them all again just for him. Devin then walks away, spins in on himself, and then vanishes. I've never met a billionaire, so maybe this is just a thing that they do.
Slick! Oh, you must be Michael's boy.
On I Fought the Law, it looks like to us that Franklin arrives first, Trevor second, and then Michael third. But actually, just off screen, Michael and Trevor are already there the entire time. I guess Molly and Devin just assume that they're shy, and therefore ignore them until they work up the courage to join the conversation. First, Trevor very casually walks up, teleports a bit, and then moves in to have a chat.
Oh, of course, you must be the creepy one.
Michael's brain seems to break, so he walks off in the complete wrong direction. Given that this model of Michael is defective, the game just deletes him and then makes a new one directly in the conversation.
Oh!
Molly leaving is amazing though. Not only does the car levitate with the driver's head through the roof, but she just pops beneath the ground for funsies. Well, I mean, so does the truck in the background, so maybe there was something wrong with the road. We all know that Devin does a lot of dodgy construction, but behind the scenes we can see the full extent of this. This guy is underground pointing at nothing, before walking over to pop up to ground level, where he waddles away, before teleport sliding his way into becoming a new person, and then using those pointing skills he practiced earlier. He waddles along the exact same path he did underground, before transforming into someone else, generating what I suspect is his third paycheck. He then teleports and crosses the exact same track he did before. He isn't alone in running this scam though. This black guy walks behind a pole to transform into a white guy to walk and then teleport to become a different black guy. That is a really strange sentence to say out loud. This guy hides underground to warp into this bulldozer, only to drive for a bit before teleporting back underground so he can pop up and direct this truck before then going back underground again. Clearly this site called for many trucks, but that shit costs money, so they just use one truck. They have it drive through objects, underground, on air, teleporting all over the site before eventually going to disappear entirely. Clearly they were renting it by the hour. You know when you're working, but your boss can't see you working, so you make sure to move somewhere where your boss is, so you know that your boss knows that you're working? Yeah, that's these guys. I am frankly not even sure what these guys are doing, but it's weird that I've acquired two guys to do. At the end of I Fought the Law, Molly's driver puts so much unnecessary effort into his job. He first phases into the car, and then does a casual T-pose to stretch. Then he phases into the driver's seat, so he can phase out the driver's door, open the door for Molly, and then drive away. My dude, you can just walk around the car.
Get a grip, I love ya!
Anton Baudelaire, more like into the grounds alaire.
Boo, you suck!
Shut up, that's funny. On the mission Eye in the Sky, the pilot so much doesn't want to be seen with Trevor, he actually turns himself invisible. If I was Trevor, I'd feel hurt. Funnily enough though, when they find the Z-Type, the pilot and Trevor change seats, so Trevor is actually flying. But when they get to the parking garage, they switch back, with the pilot becoming visible again. I guess this is why Trevor grew to like flying the helicopter, resulting in him kicking the pilot out after the mission and stealing it.
Patricia, get us something to drink, would you? Quickly!
We already know on Card Libre that Martin mistreats Patricia, but we don't really get to see how bad things are. Behind the scenes, she isn't even allowed in the house unless Martin needs her for something. That's just sad. Trevor was right to kidnap her, clearly. You likely already know that Michael is not actually shooting the huge gun at the plane on this mission, and is instead standing around the other side of the observatory. However, what you probably don't know is that when you do use the gun, Michael actually still responds to your inputs. So even though you never see it, your shots make Michael melee, and you can even make him run forward just by using normal controls. Another detail is that the plane doesn't fly to where we shoot it. It in fact spawns at the airport and is simply teleported there. This means that after you get to the van and the game allows you to go anywhere you want, you can actually drive all the way to the airport and see the plane. While shooting the pilot doesn't kill him, it does cause him to take off with the plane. Although this obviously changes nothing about the mission, once you go back and get in the van, the plane will be teleported where it needs to be for it to be shot down. I'm not quite sure why they did this, but if you look at the interior of the plane while it flies, when it actually crashes, the interior first gains far more detail, but then it changes to a completely different interior. Also, you might have noticed that the two guys we find outside of the plane are never actually in the plane. I'm sure you lewd people have always wanted to see Franklin strip and then switch clothes with the actor in deep inside, but unfortunately this doesn't occur. Franklin instead warps a copy of the actor's clothes onto his body, momentarily creating two copies of the same outfit, before then deleting the actor's clothes with his mind. Now, does the actor die here? Well, after Franklin leaves, the body seems to literally roll over and die, so I guess so. On Minor Turbulence, Trevor famously crashes into the back of a plane with a crop duster, but there's a lot more going on in this cutscene than we see. As Trevor flies in, the broken parts of the crop duster are above the plane, and they warp down into his plane as he goes inside, whilst the unbroken parts fly upwards out of the plane. As we go in, we see two guys dive out of the way. While one dives out normally, the other one actually hits the air and rolls, before standing up to T-pose and vanish. What's most surprising is that the enemies we later face are not actually inside the plane. They are instead just chilling in the air before they are needed. Based on everything you've seen throughout this video, you would assume they would be warped into the plane. However, they don't move. The plane warps into them to put them inside. All of this is facilitated by this magic black box. These hidden boxes are the true architects of the chaos that is GTA 5. During the Paleto score setup, we see Michael get angry at Trevor for throwing stones at him.
I'm gonna break your fucking fingers, you don't knock that shit off.
What we don't see is that he actually does something about it. Like a scared crab, Michael burrows underground, away from danger, until Lester arrives. Lester, while on the bus, seemingly can't decide what seat he wants to sit on, as he changes multiple times before getting off. I'm also unsure what happened to the original bus driver, but they were able to very quickly get a replacement. Not even the laws of physics will prevent this guy from getting his passengers to their destination. Oddly though, as the gang is getting in the car, another Lester appears in front of the bus that just pulled away, and he does the exact same movements as the Lester getting into the car, before then vanishing. But why, Rockstar? Why? When we set the alarm off at the bank and the tellers walk out, amazingly, they appear to be two sets of twins. Clearly the odds of this are millions to one. In the introduction to Predator, we learn why Patricia is so good at cleaning. Telekinesis. She can let go of the iron and it will still follow wherever she desires. Trevor being so interested in her now makes a lot more sense. When you're finding the O'Neills in the forest with Michael, you may have seen this big thing that suddenly disappears. Yes, that is actually the Sasquatch. Whether this is a real Sasquatch or just the guy in the costume, you be the judge. When the gang cuts into the vault on the Paleto score heist, we are normally directed to watch the police as they arrive. However, if we stay looking in the bank, we will find that Michael has decided to T-pose, instead of helping his crewmate in the vaults. To be fair, that crewmate seems to be stuck inside a gate and practicing proposing to his girlfriend, so maybe they are just both useless. Apparently the gang didn't feel comfortable getting changed into their armor all in one room, so Michael gets changed in the bank, Trevor gets changed under the ground, and the third guy, he just pops into existence and sprouts up from the ground with Trevor. Once they go out and intimidate the police, they give them hope by disappearing, before saying psych and returning to kick their asses. At the end of the heist, the train they jump onto that takes them away is actually an entirely different train from the one that we see in the gameplay. This new train is the compact model. It slowly stretches out as it drives away.
Easy, easy! I'm a friendly. Agent Sanchez.
Our very own corrupt G-man in training.
The end of this mission is just a mess. First off, the millions of dollars that they steal, Agent Sanchez ditches it underneath the ground. The train that drops them off, after the cutscene, it flicks around and goes back the other way. As for Agent Sanchez, his car leaves without him, giving him no choice but to teleport into the driver's seat. Then a bit down the road, he ceases to exist. But somehow he returns, seemingly just to do some cool moves with his car before disappearing again.
Enjoy it now, because it's about to start raining fire.
The mission Derailed focuses around a train derailing, but we never get to see the full extent of just how off the rails this train is. For example, the doors and parts of train that we see falling off the bridge don't actually come from the train at all. In reality, they come from a small pile that appears underground that is thrown out when it's needed. When we are forced to leave Trevor and switch to Michael, you might believe the train continues to the destination. In reality, it stops, and Trevor teleports to the top, crouching down holding on for dear life, despite the train not even moving. When the time is right, the train teleports to the bridge to crash and he jumps off. When the two trains hit, the freight cars change color, get forced back, and turn at an odd angle. And then after the crash, the train is then switched back to the original train. More surprisingly though is that the whole train levitates off the track, only for it to snap back onto the track after the crash is over, and for some reason the last freight car of the train just vanishes during this process. This is also the case with the train on the other side. The train that arrives on the bridge is also replaced by a similar, yet subtly different train. Then after the crash takes place, it is switched back to the original train. So in total, there are 4 trains involved in this 2-train crash. The whole crash is controlled by these 2 grey cubes that appear and then disappear after it is over.
Hey, before you go, show me the loot.
We don't usually get a good look at the statue that they steal to give to Martin, so here you go. For those unaware, this is a fertility statue, which is why it has a huge schlong.
Let's go save America!
The behind the cutscene for Monkey Business suggests that the area was a bit different at one point in development, given that Steve, Dave, and Michael all walk through the grounds before they vanish into the future to hop into their boats. As they enter the facility, Steve and Dave decide to teleport and levitate to get up the ladder. Now that's just lazy. More interesting though is the second crushed into a ball Dave that appears when they go to the ladder. It proceeds to do every movement that Dave does before blessedly being returned to non-existence. I have no idea why some characters get duplicates and others do not. It's probably not news to you that the elevator in Monkey Business is fake and the scientist is there the entire time. After a short amount of time, he just teleports closer to the door so he can get got as fast as possible.
Grab the card.
Once inside the elevator, Dave and Steve, like amateurs, need to phase through the ceiling to get to the upper floor, whilst Chad Michael just teleports there. These guys really just aren't on Michael's level. I mean figuratively, because they are all together on the second level, but you know what I mean.
We missed the window! Agency response team's already in the building!
I've already covered elsewhere that Michael and Dave were originally going to be mounted on top of the crate being carried by the cargo Bob, and we can see behind the cutscene that they still do that for a time before being teleported away into the cargo Bob. More interesting is Agent ULP trying to arrest Steve. We get to see a kind of reverse Agent Smith situation, because when the cutscene ends, ULP is transformed into a soldier with glasses. This was probably done because he needs to show up in the wrap-up later, and so it wouldn't make sense for the player to kill him now. Given that during development it was planned for there to be a chase through the city at this point, it is fairly unremarkable that Trevor flies the cargo Bob away underground and Steve drives the Toxin down the runway before stopping and similarly vanishing. A bit anticlimactic really.
You better treat her right, man!
Patricia's adventure when she gets dropped off by Trevor is quite strange. She walks away through the ground, almost reaching the house, before teleporting back out the front, but now with an arm missing. I wonder if this was left over from another direction they originally planned to go with this scene.
Look, Debra! Floyd! Will you marry me?
Now what you've all been waiting for. Can we go behind the cutscenes to find who killed who in the triangle of potential violence between Trevor, Floyd, and Debra?
Fucking nice!
Nope, it still fades to black. However, after Floyd grabs the knife, it teleports out of his hands and levitates in the air between him and Debra. Debra is also not pointing the gun at where we see Trevor to be. She is instead pointing in the direction of the knife and Floyd. But what if at some point in development, she was pointing her gun at Trevor? Perhaps at one point, Trevor was going to grab the knife. Either he'd grab it himself or he'd take it from Floyd. Debra then shoots at Trevor, but misses and accidentally kills Floyd. Perhaps due to this, or because he was going to do it anyway, Trevor bashes Debra against the window, resulting in the marks we see from the outside, and then he uses his knife to stab her to death. Based on what we see here, it is possible that originally we got a cutscene where Trevor violently killed Debra, but someone at Rockstar deemed it too graphic. There is some evidence that early in development the game was more violent and hardcore, but was softened over time. This could have been one of the scenes that they softened. Rockstar just moved Trevor off to the side and recorded his close-up while not bothering to move the rest of the scene because it couldn't be seen anyway. But that's just a theory, a Grand Theft Auto theory. Trevor of course goes to violently take control of the strip club by killing the owner Leon. But behind the scenes, Leon isn't even there. Trevor is just talking to himself. Maybe the real Leon is the friends we made along the way. Nah, we see his body later during surveying the score. Although when Trevor shoves Leon back in the fridge, he actually disappears from us. In fact, the whole fridge later disappears, only to return with Leon inside. It's like Leon found some way to teleport away, and the fridge teleported after him and brought him back. Despite that Leon doesn't fit very well in the fridge, he does seem to be alive. Both his eyes and head move. Also, he reaches his hand up to open the fridge and let himself out, which is what caused him to fall out in the original cutscene.
Big one.
Well, I guess at this point he dies though. Oh, by the way, Franklin enters the room through a wall. I figured I'd mention it, but it seemed less interesting than the guy alive in the fridge. So when we survey the score, you might think we look through Lester's camera at the security vans, but actually, every time we go into this mode, it deletes Lester and Trevor from existence. They then pop back whenever we move into the normal view.
I guess that won't work.
I can now see why Lester doesn't enjoy being in the chopper.
Hey, man.
Fuck. What do you want?
Ah yes, the classic scene where Trevor confronts Michael. What wondrous secrets must the behind the cutscene reveal? There's an extra pillow in the ground. Also, throughout the conversation, the furniture moves a bit. Look, sometimes you have to have the weak segments so people can appreciate the good segments. Consider this part the scouting the port of this video.
Fuck you!
Apparently, huge budget cuts have occurred at the airports. Not only do their stairs and door no longer work, but they have also made some questionable cuts from the plane Michael boards. Now, I don't claim to be an aviation expert, but I think Michael was very lucky to make it to North Yankton on this thing.
You reptilian motherfucker!
While it appeared that Michael and Trevor were alone during their dispute and later got interrupted, in reality, the Chinese gangster who interrupted them was there the entire time. Honestly, it was quite considerate of him to wait and give them a chance to resolve their lovers' quarrel. Someone who surprisingly wasn't there the entire time was Brad. At various different points he leaves and comes back. I guess being in the same spot underground for a decade would be quite boring. While in the original cutscene it looks like Trevor locks the gate when he leaves, in reality he takes the entire gate with him when he teleports away. So at least for a while there, Michael could have easily gone after him, at least until Trevor seems to have realized his mistake, and so he teleports the gate back. On the mission Pac-Man, something strange happens when Trevor is yelling,
Boss man's happy!
Now looking at this, you might think the strange thing is Franklin levitating with Lamar already off the trailer, and then they teleport to the back of the trailer, just so Lamar can get off the trailer again. That isn't it though. What's strange is a small black ladder appears and then disappears on the trailer. It's never used and we as players never get to see it. Perhaps Lamar at some point in development used this ladder to climb down. Through the power of behind the cutscene on the mission Fresh Meat, we can finally see what the lady spirit walking was all about.
Shut the fuck up! Thank you.
Once past Trevor, Aunt Denise's friends abandon her as she pops beneath the map. She then turns around smiling in a very creepy way before being deleted from reality. Her friend in red, on the other hand, is looking at the ground when she goes through it, and so she seems to get confused and turn around thinking, where did the floor go? She then gets crushed in on herself and she vanishes. The woman in blue though has the worst experience, as when she goes through the ground, she seems to lose control of her spine. I'm not even really sure how to describe this, but I can only assume it must be agony beyond comparison. I think therefore it's a mercy when she gets crushed and banished. I can only assume all these women pissed off some pretty powerful spirits with their so-called spirit walking.
Anything for you, sweetheart.
When Michael hits Fabian with the laptop, its owner storms off in a rage, but it turns out she doesn't get very far. She actually pops beneath the ground so she can continue to watch them.
What he's trying to say, Mom, is that he's a pathetic old...
She has an absolutely crazed look on her face and a shaking claw hand. The end of reuniting the families suggests the mission once ended somewhere else, or Michael's house was constructed differently. This is because once the family gets home, they walk off to the left and downstairs that don't exist. When Michael and Lester wait for the janitor on cleaning out the bureau, a minimum of 3 cars drive out the parking lot before the janitor. The janitor and the first car appear inside the parking garage at the same time, so the janitor is always in his car, watching as the 3 other cars pop into existence in front of him. We are therefore not waiting for the janitor to finish work and get into his car, we are waiting for him to decide that he doesn't want to hang in the parking lot and wants to go home.
Hey, give me a hand, Briggs! Come on! I see it street level! I fucking hope so!
During the Bureau raid firefighter approach, it looks as though when leaving the gang rappels down one after the other. Actually, they move down just once so they're out of sight, and they then stack up on each other before them warping down. At the end of the Bureau raid firefighter approach, in the normal cutscene the camera switches between showing us Michael and Franklin, or just Lester, but this actually hides something horrific, as whenever we normally can't see Michael, he turns into some sort of predator. His smile distorts like he's an alien trying to fake normal human emotion. It's amazing that Lester's able to keep his cool despite looking at something so horrific, especially given that Michael walks into the room and then is teleported back to the door to enter again, but this time by sliding. I have no idea why this happens or why Rockstar didn't fix it regardless of whether or not we'd normally see it.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
On the Bureau raid roof approach, it seems that Franklin is too lazy to actually take the stairs into the garment factory. He therefore teleports beneath the ground and then warps up. Imagine having such an ego that you think you're too good for stairs.
Ready? Are you fucking kidding me?
When jumping out of the helicopter as Michael, we normally don't get to see that Franklin and the other crew member have a very interesting diving technique. This involving seemingly defying the laws of gravity for a few seconds before teleporting down below. When our ally's helicopter tragically crashes, we watch it fall from the building. While we assume it crashes down below, it actually stops halfway before eventually being deleted from reality. I respect the pilot's desire to avoid littering. While the gang rappels down the building, we hear the emergency services arriving down below. However, it turns out it's just their vehicles that are arriving, as they lack any people within them. I can only assume they were busy, and so sent their vehicles along ahead, and they therefore showed up on foot later. Lester was apparently sleeping so deeply that he was on another plane of reality, at least until Franklin and Michael arrive and rudely wake him up.
Hey, you did it! We did! Yeah! Fucking it!
When the gang is celebrating the successful raid on the FIB building, they each take a shot. Lester is kind enough to grab the alcohol through the table and then warp it to Michael, who then gives it to Franklin. Franklin then manifests some glasses from nowhere while pretending to reach into a cupboard that doesn't actually exist. This empties the bottle, so Franklin stumbles off to get some more, but unfortunately, he accidentally gets too close to this cursed vase and therefore gets teleported into the wall. The look on his face here, he is really worried about his circumstances. Honestly, this has happened to me more times than I can count, so I can't really blame him. Thankfully, he does manage to get out, and when he returns, Lester exclaims that he needs to get another drink. This leads Franklin to realize he's got no more booze, so he bails. When Michael leaves though, he goes on a bit of a journey, as he walks through the stairs before vanishing and appearing outside in a different outfit. I wonder if Michael walking off this way suggests that Franklin's house was once structured differently, or if this scene was originally set somewhere else. A key feature of GTA 5 is that all bad people do yoga, and if we look behind the cutscenes on the wrap-up, we can see that Steve seemingly fits this trend as he is hella flexible, and he and Sanchez can also levitate. I like how they suddenly come alive when it's their time to get involved.
You could say that.
Furthermore, I guess Steve and Dave knew shit was going to go down because they stashed their pistols beneath the ground so they could summon them when needed. Guys, you know pockets exist, right? The Merryweather chopper pops into reality and chills out for a bit, waiting for the perfect time to move up so they can have the most impact in the conversation.
Put the guns down, gentlemen.
When the FIB agents pop in, they were seemingly unprepared to be teleported because their guns are on the ground, so they need to waste time picking them up before they can rush in.
Put your weapons down, all of you!
The mission Legal Trouble rightly starts at the movie studio because it's all fake. When Molly leaves with the film, she doesn't actually go very far, she just stands outside the door. This means that when Michael leaves to pursue her, he actually rushes right past her. My theory is that Molly actually wanted to get blended by the jet engine, and Michael was in on it the entire time. It is the only possible explanation.
Now let's take a look at this place, man. Lester said this was some type of big weed store spot.
On Lamar Down, you might have missed that the guys that are escorting Lamar are not ballers, despite that everyone else with him later is. This is likely because, as we know from cut content, this mission was changed a lot during developments. At one point, rescuing Lamar was done in a parking lot in Los Santos, and these guys may have been more suited to that scenario.
We did it! Solomon!
During the mission Meltdown at the movie premiere, just off camera a door appears for no reason. It is the same door as the theater itself, and it disappears moments later. The woman with Mr. Richards has an entirely different woman underground, mimicking her movements exactly. These women then later swap places, allowing the other woman to be on top. However, these women aren't unique. Looking beneath the ground, there is a continuous sequence of people moving out of sight, changing into someone else, and then moving back into the scene. The most interesting behind the cutscene fact though can be seen with Devin, as when he goes inside the theater, he shows off his amazing yoga-based flexibility before vanishing without a trace. Man, I really need to take up yoga. When Michael gets back to his house, he does save Tracey from the Merryweather, but before he arrives, she isn't in very much danger. This is because Tracey and the mercenaries spawn inside the walls, and then when Michael gets close, the door opens by itself, which causes specifically this package to fall off the table, and then the guard and Tracey leave the walls together, resulting in Tracey needing to be saved. You see, this is why I never leave your walls. It is far safer in here. It turns out the Merryweather have self-throwing grenades.
Frag out!
At the end of the mission, we get to experience Jimmy's first-person perspective as he takes out the Merryweather in the dark and accidentally begins teabagging Michael.
Fuck off me!
What's funny though is how Rockstar enabled us to get this perspective. Behind the cutscene, we can see that Jimmy's head is folded back off his body so that it doesn't block where we're looking from in the cutscene. Honestly, I think Jimmy missing his head makes his rescue of Michael far more impressive. On the big score subtle approach, like amateurs, Michael, Trevor, and Franklin are given packages with their outfits so they can get changed. They should have learned from their crew member outside, who just instantly teleports new clothes onto his body. Hell, Gustavo is such a professional that he just teleports in already dressed and teleports into the car as well. These guys are the real pros, no time wasted.
Alright people, let's go!
The stealing of the security vans is just amazing. When the car pulls up, everyone vanishes except Gustavo, who T-poses. When they are changing the pop tires, everyone again vanishes except Gustavo, who again T-poses. You might have always wondered what happens to the guys we steal the vans from. After they get ushered along by a floating gun that is eventually caught by one of our crew, they vanish, only to come back so that one can vanish again whilst the other two get teleported into the black van without their helmets. The van then pulls away and vanishes from existence. That's certainly one way to have no loose ends in a heist. Trevor climbs into the security van through the unopened door, which is weird because the other guy does open his door before getting in. Although his face is messed up and Gustavo is crouched right behind him, ready to take his place when he warps away into the other van.
Authorization?
The guys had fake IDs made to get them into the bank, but as they feared they might misplace them, they decided to stash them beneath the bank ahead of time so they could summon them into their hands from the ground when they were needed. The bank apparently found a genius way to increase its security. The elevator doesn't actually move. You go in, the doors close, and if the manager thinks you're cool, you walk out on the exact same floor you entered, and then you're securely teleported to the right floor.
Ah, my back!
During the minigame where you need to guide the security vans by changing the traffic lights, all the cars you ever see are floating in the sky. The game simply teleports them in whenever you look at the cameras at the intersection. The Merryweather were actually a lot more prepared for the robbery than we realize. When the gang gets to the meetup point under the bridge, the Merryweather are already there, beneath the ground. They are all in different stages of animation, and they simply rise to the surface when they feel it tactically makes sense to surprise the gang.
You, keep loading!
Surprisingly, during the cutscene at least, these guys move absolutely no gold. They instead summon some gold from the ground, move it towards the cars, but then drop it back beneath the ground so it can fly back to the start and be transported again. Budget cuts, man, I can't even get real gold in my cutscenes. When we're getting chased, the police helicopter spawns in the sky with its blades not spinning at all. It waits for us to arrive before starting its engines, and then it rushes along the road before stopping and then vanishing. The trucks that spawn in to carry our cars and loot begin by levitating off the ground. What's more interesting though is the blue truck driver has an identity crisis. First it is some random guy, then it turns into the driver we chose, and then after the fade to black, there is a third different driver. The driver of the red truck is a similar story. It's first some guy who then becomes Chef, and then after the fade to black, it's still Chef, but now he has glasses. Although the red truck has an added bonus that it floats when it leaves for some reason. When Franklin drives into the back of the trucks, the cars vanish, but he does not. It showcases some serious strength on Franklin's part that he doesn't get thrown around. This especially when random traffic spawns inside the truck. The obvious approach to the big score heist starts as you'd expect, with Michael chilling inside a wall before going to discuss the plan.
Alright, I'm gonna meet my guy at the bank.
Under the bank wall as we crash through it, there are various random boxes and triangles that act as reference points to allow for the massive damage. At the end of the heist, the cutscene tells us that Michael, Lester and Trevor all fly off together, but behind the cutscenes it's a different story. Lester actually disappears entirely, while Michael gets teleported to the other helicopter that our crew used, and he flies away in that. However, if we pick one of the crew members who die, we lose the second helicopter.
Where's the rest of the crew?
So in that case, while Lester still disappears, Michael stays in the chopper with Trevor and they fly away together. On ending B, something sensible, Franklin sensibly stashed his gun beneath Reality so he could summon it when he confronted Michael.
Fuck.
Apparently Michael's casual walk in this scene wasn't long enough for what the dev wanted, so they had Michael do this, so he's in the right place for when we see him next in the cutscene. This is easily the most goofy Michael has ever looked. Also, the train on this mission drives itself, and it is possible to go so fast with Franklin that Michael clips into the train, which looks like this. On this mission, Michael famously was originally going to die by falling into helicopter blades, and while that obviously doesn't happen in the release version, the helicopter that he would have fallen into still spawns just off camera during the cutscene. Franklin's walk off into the distance isn't actually as graceful as we're led to believe in the original cutscene, for he warps underground, does a casual T-pose, and then disappears. On the third way, I imagine for security reasons, Franklin stashes his phone beneath the map and summons it in when he wants to call Lester. Also, there's great news for those who love Devin Weston, because when Trevor throws him into the car, he completely disappears whilst leaving his bindings behind. When Trevor gets to the meetup point, Devin teleports back to listen to the gang berate him, but then when they close the lid of the car, unbeknownst to them, he teleports away again. Good old Devin Weston, always having an escape plan. Fun fact, in the news reports after Devin's supposed death, they explicitly state that they never find his body. So hey, maybe we'll see him at some point in GTA 6 after all. But we are still not done. There is some interesting things behind the side mission cutscenes as well. On targeted risk with Franklin, Dom has such a large ego that it requires two of him just to contain it, which is why we see a clone of him under the map, acting just as animatedly as his twin on the surface.
I was just saying you missed a truck, dawg.
On liquidity risk, Dom actually does multiple stunts after leaving the plane in his ATV. We normally don't get to see this because by the time we jump out, he is way too far ahead for this to be seen. On Paparazzo Reality Check, there is a weird white puck under the ground. It doesn't seem to do anything, but this woman's hand looks very strange, and the puck does come up to hover near it before going below the map again, and this for some reason fixes the woman's hand. Watching the original cutscene, it almost feels like it's cut specifically not to show this white puck. I think it's fairly clear that something was changed in the scene during development, but your guess is as good as mine as to what that was. On a starlet in Vinewood, Peter Dreyfuss has a copy of himself underground doing all the same animations. Again, why does Rockstar need to do this with some characters in cutscenes, but not others? On Grassroots, Michael luckily has a minigun he can summon from under the map when he needs to take out his alien delusions. Barry also makes a very smooth exit from his conversation with Michael by popping under the map and then vanishing.
Careful! You have come this far.
On accepting the truth, Michael meets the Epsilonist Marnie and they have a chat. Despite that it's quite a while into this conversation before Tom walks in, he is actually there the entire time, awkwardly waiting outside for his cue to enter.
Kiflin, just a mother.
On unknowing the truth, Michael has brought some cash to the Epsilon cults. While he speaks to Chris Fromage, the Epsilonists use the power of Kiflam to summon a bag of money under the ground and back into the building, so they have sufficient room in the car to put a new bag of money in. Also, all the Epsilonists hang out in the walls. I imagine this has something to do with achieving enlightenment.
Oh, I wish you were dead, I really do.
Exorcising demons is a good name for Trevor's mission with Marianne, because Trevor looks like a demon at the start of the cutscene. He is curled in on himself under the map until the time is right for him to pop up and attack. I imagine Marianne would see him as even more of a freak had she seen him earlier. Vinewood's souvenirs becomes even more cursed when you realize that both Nigel and Mrs. Thornhill have clones under the map during the cutscene. They not only make the same movements, but they also kidnap their own copy of Elder Napoli. If they all just had mustaches, it'd be like they came from a mirror dimension.
Alright, go ahead. She's waiting for you, right upstairs, okay?
On Surreal Estate, Trevor goes to bang Josh's wife in the hotel room. Looking behind the cutscene, I'm sure you hope to see some hot coffee action, but sadly, once Trevor walks inside, he has just warped outside and then warped away to continue the cutscene as we normally see it.
Is that how you greet your mother, Trevor?
On Mrs. Phillips, famously after the cutscene is over, Mrs. Phillips turns into a maid, and if you glitch into the room, this maid will shuffle between maid models. It's a shame that Mrs. Phillips didn't turn into one of these women when Trevor was younger, because he'd probably be less messed up as a person. Well, that was quite the journey. It's amazing to me that stuff like this exists in every game, effectively secrets that only the developers are ever meant to see. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as we enjoyed making it. Thank you for watching, and I wish you all the best.